Okay, okay. So you see, we got started with JPA, right? That's what we got started with. And I did explain to you, right? Okay. I'll go back to my draw.io and the Hibernate, right? Now, there are quite a few other things that we need to discuss about Hibernate. We must understand quite a few other things also now, as far as Hibernate is concerned. Sorry. And what that is. That is, Hibernate has got some important and the most architecturally significant components that one must be aware of. And you must be aware of how internally Hibernate works. Since we have an opportunity to discuss these things, it will be a big boon for you. Because otherwise, I have usually seen people working with Spring JPA, which in turn behind the scenes uses Hibernate as the implementation, but they do not know how internally Hibernate works. So it's good that you know how, if you get to know that how Hibernate internally works and what are those architecturally significant components that are there in Hibernate, it will be easier for you to write sophisticated applications. So Hibernate has got one component which is very critical, and that is called the session object. Now, this session object has got nothing to do with HTTP session. I repeat, this session object has got nothing to do with HTTP session. This is not that HTTP session object, right? This is an object which is very specific to Hibernate session object, correct? And this session object that you have, each point of time when you access Hibernate typically in a web-based application, each session object is created for a thread. Each and every thread, you know very well that in a web-based application, each and every request is executed in a thread. And so is the case with the session object. Each and every session object will be specific to the thread. And there is a transaction object internally which is related to that particular session object. So there is a transaction object that is related to, all there with me, friends? All there with me? What I'm explaining is, I mean, very important and very interesting. You will find very few people knowing about this. People use it, people use Hibernate, people use JPA, but they do not know how internally things really work. So you see, you have a transaction object which is associated to the session. So if this is your web-based application, if this is your web application, right, which you have deployed on Tomcat, right, right, and you have browsers or mobile apps sending requests. So a request lands here on the Tomcat server and it will pick up one of the threads from the thread pool. Now, this shouldn't be new for you at all. I'm sure you remember thread pool, concept of thread pool. Tell me, each and every request that lands on the server executes in the same thread or different threads? Come on. Tell me, it executes in the same thread or different threads? Different thread. Very good. Each and every request executes in one of the threads from the thread pool. You remember I had made you all write that. Each and every thread is executed, each and every request is executed in one of the threads from the thread pool. So the request lands here and it comes here. One of the threads from the thread pool is picked up and that request is executed in that thread. And furthermore, as your execution proceeds further, your application, if it is using Hibernate, okay, if your application is using Hibernate, then for that one single request, which is executing in one of the threads of the thread pool, you will find a new transaction object getting created, a session object getting created, and the transaction object is related to that session. So, essentially, what I'm trying to convey to you is it's quite possible that another request comes from some maybe a mobile application, maybe yet another laptop or a desktop, right? Another request comes and it lands here. Each one of those requests will execute in a different thread. To be very specific, one of the threads from the thread pool, correct? That's what's going to happen. So it is the same. Suppose this is that request. I say request one. Okay, if this is that request one, so that request one is executed. Suppose in a thread which is there from the thread pool, and the name of the thread is, say, for example, T1. Suppose it's a T1. Then that session object will be related to T1 thread. This session object is created in T1 thread, and the transaction also is related to that session object. While thread T1 or while request 1 is getting executed in thread T1, don't you think it is quite possible that concurrently, same point of time, or in plain English, simultaneously, there is another request also coming? Possible, isn't it? Correct. So I'll make this as, so it's prominent. This is request 1. This is request. This is request 2. So the second request lands, and for the second request, of course, needless to say that while thread T1 was executing request 1, of course, it is supposed to be another thread from the thread pool that will execute request 2. Suppose that happens to be T2. And if you are using Hibernate in that application, then in that case, there will be another session object created, and that will be associated to thread T2. That's how it is. And since now, so it's so very easy to understand. Since transaction is related to session, I repeat, since transaction is related to the session, it is quite possible that in this request you update, insert, delete something, and that is rolled back. While maybe there was a validation error, maybe there was a validation failure or something else, it rolls back. While the second request that is getting executed in thread T2 and the session object is separate, and hence the transaction object is associated to that session object, this particular transaction may commit. Come on, you're getting the point. This may roll back, this may commit, or vice versa. This may roll back and this may commit. What I'm trying to tell you is that each and every session, this is called session per thread architecture. What is this known as? Session per thread. That means a new session object is created per thread. Am I talking about HTTP session? Am I talking about the servlet API? No, I am talking about a session object of Hibernate. See now, if I go back to my application here, I say Ctrl Shift T and I say session. You can see that session here, session. Here it is. Can you see this? org.hibernate package session. It is this session that I'm talking about. Of course, there are implementation classes that provides the implementation of the session. We are least concerned about it. For us, it is an abstraction and we work with the session object. When you download the source, you will be able to see the entire implementation as well. So who is the chief architect of Spring? Who is the chief architect of Spring? Tell me. I did share that with you all. Rod Johnson, yes. Yes, Rod Johnson. Similarly, the chief architect of Hibernate is Gavin King. Yes, Gavin King, right? So you see, there are some classes that provides the implementation. They might have given the name of the class here or whatever. No problem. That's not important with us, for us, but then this is how it is. Okay, this is that session object that I'm talking about. Whereas that HTTP session is different, which comes from Servlet API. Can you see this on my screen, friends? This comes from Servlet API. Got this? This comes from Servlet API. This is different. We are not talking about HTTP session of the Servlet API. We are talking about the session object from Hibernate. We are talking about org.hibernate.session, and this is one of the most critical points about a session. Each and every session is related to a thread. So far, so good. Any questions on this? So far, so good. Okay, right. Now, let me ungroup this for a reason, and I will make this box a bit bigger. There is a reason why I'm making this bigger, because okay, this is my session 2. Okay, suppose this session object contains, it's a cache of objects. It contains objects. I repeat, it contains objects. So through Hibernate, I repeat, through Hibernate, when you access the database, so who is supposed to fire the select statement to the database? Who is supposed to fire the select statement to the database? Tell me, is it that we are going to fire select statement to the database, or it is the responsibility of Hibernate? Very correct. It is the responsibility of Hibernate, right? So I'm not supposed to fire directly. So what happens is that there are components in Hibernate. I repeat, there are components in Hibernate which talks to the database. So for now, I will just put, you know, now internally those components, what those components are, we can dig into it and we can find out, right? They are definitely the implementation of session objects, but then however they might have designed it, we are not concerned about it. So one of the components, some particular component of Hibernate will fire a select statement to the database. So suppose you want to retrieve a customer object. It is this Hibernate component, some component in Hibernate will fire a select statement to the database, and it will get the data and it will keep that customer object over here. So you will have that customer object here, customer object, right? It will have this customer object here. Now you've got to listen to this very carefully, very nicely, okay? In the same session, in the same thread, if I once again fire the select statement for exactly the same customer object with the same primary key, will it once again fire a select statement to the database? No. Very good, Aniket. It will not. Why? Because customer object is already there in the session object. It's a cache. It is called the first level cache. Forget about the second level cache for the time being now. This is the first level cache. So just name it as cache as of now. So there is customer object over here. Okay. And session object already contains the customer object. Yes, Monisha, very nice. Very nice. I'm so very happy with your answers. Absolutely perfect. It is already there. Customer object is already there in the session. So if you try to, get the same object again, if you try to get, it's not going to fire a select statement. It says that object is already there. Then what happens is you change the state of this object. Suppose you change the state of this object. What do you mean by changing the state of this object? You change the value of name, or you change the value of address. Never think of changing the value of the primary key, right? You don't change the value of the primary key. You delete an object altogether, but you don't change the value of the primary key. Okay, so you change the name, you change the address, both of them, or maybe one of the two. So where is that change happening? The moment you fire a setter method to change the state of the object, do you think it fires an update? Immediately, do you think it fires an update? No, it does not fire an update. Only and only when you explicitly do a flush. I repeat, when you explicitly do a flush, at that point of time, it will fire an update. How will it know that it is supposed to fire an update? Because it is quite possible you might have created a new customer object as well in the same session. New customer object. Okay, that's also quite possible. You might have created a new customer object. One is that you have already retrieved with a primary key 101, suppose. So that is already there in the database and you have retrieved it. Okay. Other is that you have created a new customer object. Got it. So how will it know at the time of flushing the data to the database that this is supposed to be updated and this is supposed to be inserted? How will it know? It will know based on the state of an object. So whenever you create a new object and you give it to the session, it understands that that object is already there in the session or not. If it is not there in the session, then in that case, it will create a new. It will fire an insert. But if it is already there in the session, and if you make changes to the state of that object, it will mark that object as dirty. Yes, that's the term. It will mark the object as dirty. What do you mean by the dirty object? The runtime programmatically, the state of that object has changed. In such a case, it will fire an update. And if you fire a delete through Hibernate, and if you say that I want to delete this object, it's not going to immediately fire a delete statement here. It will mark that object for a deletion. So whenever the flush is happening, it will then fire a delete statement here. I will prove all of these things to you. And let's see these things in action. This is how the internal working of the session object works. Correct? And this is very interesting to know and to understand. It's very interesting. You will definitely have edge over others when you know these things, and you will be able to write better applications. All right. So let's go back to my customer DAO. Can you please explain flushing? Flushing is synchronize the data that is there, synchronize the state of the session object. Whatever objects are over here, whatever the state of that object is, whether they are dirty objects or they are deleted objects or they are newly inserted objects, newly added objects to the session, fire the corresponding insert, update, and deletes to your database. That's what flushing is. Right, Aniket? That's what flushing is. Though you don't have to do that flushing automatically, because the moment the thread completes, the moment the thread, that particular flow is completed, it will automatically do a flush internally. We don't have to worry about it. We don't have to worry about it. Okay. So you see this, I have get customers over here. Okay. I'll keep this return get customers as it is. Okay. I will keep this as it is. Leave that. But I will say customer is equal to, I'll say customer repository. First of all, tell me one thing, this customer repository, did we define the find all method over here that we used here? Did we define any find all method? No. Just hold on, friends. कहाँ है शब्बीर भाई तो आए नहीं कैसे जाएंगे चल के इतनी दूर Sure. Let's come back to this. I'm sorry. So we did not define find all method, right? So you see this JPA repository extends from paging and sorting repository, right? You see this that extends from CRUD repository, and you see there is a find all function here. CRUD stands for CRUD. See here also you've got find all method. What does CRUD stands for? Create, read, update, delete. Please repeat. CRUD stands for create, read, update, and delete. So it provides all of these features automatically. I don't have to. I don't have to write here find all method. It is already there. Since my repository extends from JPA repository, it automatically has that method. Correct? And it is this repository. I said I will explain this in detail, more detail later. Actually, it will all, it's so very easy to understand. This is one entry point to your Hibernate through the JPA API. So you don't need to interact with Hibernate directly. It is the responsibility of this customer repository to provide all of those services that you need in order to create, update, and delete. Correct? So coming back here, I've got customer, and I say customer dot. It provides yet another feature, customer repository dot find by ID. Can you see this find by ID here? And the integer is, I'm hard coding here 101. Or why should I do this? Why not have yet another function in my customer DAO? I'll say public, I'll say customer, I'll say customer, get customer, I say int ID, okay, and I pass that ID, whatever is the ID, I will pass that ID as a parameter, correct? Now this is giving me an error because from JPA 2.0 onwards, it supports Java 1.0, sorry, Java 1.8, it supports Java 1.8, and in Java 1.8, there is something called java.util.optional. Can you see this java.util.optional is it is in Java 1.8 onwards, it's there. So what it does is that because maybe ID that you have passed as a parameter may be there in the database, may not be there. In such a case, it does not return to you customer object or a null object. What it returns to you is an optional of custom. Right? What does this mean? I'll say OPT customer. Right? I'm just giving a variable name. I'll import it java.util.optional. Now, what does this mean? If the ID that is passed as parameter exists in the database, you will have this as true. If OPT customer dot is present, that means in the optional object, there is some data, there is some customer object. If it is present, then you return back customer. Okay, else you can return back, sorry, not the customer, opt customer dot get. What this get will do for you? It will get the actual customer object from within the optional object. I repeat, it will get you the customer object from within the optional object. So if it is present, you get it. If it is not present, then you return a null. But this is not the good way of returning, things from here. But that's okay for now. That's okay for now. Okay, I'll say null. That's okay for now. Okay, so far so good. Getting it? Now what I'm going to do is, I will get the customer object instead of returning it from here. I'll say customer is equal to so and so, and I will say return customer because I want to put a point across. See, as you might have seen my style of training, my dear friends, I am more interested in teaching you all what goes under the hood, what's going on under the hood, and what's how internally things really work. Because I believe rest of the other things you will be able to pick up very quickly. Else, if I spend time in that you execute this function to get this and that function to get that and then so on, you may not understand what's going on internally, and then you will not be able to work efficiently. As far as this functionality, these functions and stuff is concerned, it's very easy to pick that up. You'll find tons of resources out there on the internet. You just Google on how to find an object by ID using JPA, you'll get tons of resources, right? So coming back here, I have this, okay, with me, I have this. Now I'm going to do one thing here. I will see S out. I'll say customer dot hash code. Okay, and not only this, I will go back to my application.properties file, and here I'll say spring dot hibernate dot show, okay, yeah, JPA dot show SQL is equal to true. What does this mean? Each time your Hibernate internally fires any kind of a statement to the database, whether insert, update, delete, select, whatever it is, it will show it on the console. I repeat, it will show it on the console. Don't do this in production. Don't do this in production. Okay. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just printing the hash code, and let's see what happens here. I'm just printing the hash code here. Okay. Take a look. And what I'm also going to do is I'll say system.out.println. I will print customer.get ID. Okay, let's see what happens. I select this, I restart my application. Oh, I have not called this get customer function, isn't it? So I go to my command line runner, and after I have retrieved all the data from the database, we're fine. Will get customers, I'll fire customer deodorant, get customer, and I'll just hard code the value 101. I'm just doing that. I'm not taking any customer here or anything, though I can, but I don't want that. It's okay. Okay, see this. Hibernate select statement was fired, and the value of that ID is 101, and this is the hash code. Hash code uniquely identifies an object. I repeat, hash code uniquely identifies the object that is created in memory. I will go back to customer DAO. I once again execute exactly the same thing. Exactly the same thing here. Okay, exactly the same thing here. Got that? And I'll do one thing. I'll write S out before get. Correct? Now let me run this. Okay. You see this here. You've got before get, it fired the select statement when you said find by ID. And I have selected is present. Okay. Okay, and then again it did fire the select statement here because we are going by optional. Okay, ठीक है. Let me explain this in a different way. Customer repository dot get by ID, and this time I say ID here. Wait a minute. Yes. See the difference, my dear friends. See this difference. I am commenting this once again. All there with me, friends. Come on, all there with me. I will explain. Don't worry. My job. All there with me. कुछ difference समझ में आया? Okay. See this. I am commenting this. I'm not making it at the rate transaction. I select this and I say I'm running my code. Okay. Now each time I fire customer repository dot find by ID, it did fire a select statement. Can you see this? It did fire the select statement. And if suppose I try to print as out, I will say opt customer2 dot get dot hash code. This will be a different hash code because it did create, it did fire the select statement twice. You see this, the hash code is different. What does this mean? It does not mean that there is a same session object and twice the objects are there in the session object. It is impossible. That's not the contract of Hibernate. The contract of Hibernate is that in the session object, you cannot have two objects with the same primary key. You cannot have two objects with the same primary key. What does this mean? I will be very happy. What does this translate to? But see here, when I execute, it did give me two distinct objects. What does this mean? Is it the same session object each time it fires something to the database, or two different session objects are getting created? Come on. Yes. Yes, very good. Excellent. Excellent. Very good. Guys, you are all, this is my personal feedback for you all, and I have given this feedback to your stakeholders as well. You guys are brilliant. You guys are brilliant. I understand you guys are all cream of the crowd, guys and girls both. I mean, I'm using that common term for both. You guys are brilliant. Just that you need to put good amount of time on hands-on. And I cannot leave you all to do hands-on for for the entire day. Otherwise, I will not get a chance to cover the topics that I want to cover. Correct? So please. make sure that you do good amount of hands-on. Okay, and you do refer to the to my draw.io file. You do refer to the code that I'm writing. Do refer to, I mean, recollect all that I'm explaining, right, friends? You guys are brilliant. So, what is one additional thing that I must mention here? While saying that each and every thread will have its own session object, session per thread. When will that happen? Tell me, I'll be very happy. When will this point be true that there will be one session object per thread? When will that be true? The answer is right there in front of you. Come on. A Hibernate contract is that, okay, I'll tell you, wait a minute. What do you mean by Hibernate? Hibernate contract, what I meant to say is that Hibernate has got a contract that there will never ever be two objects in the session having the same primary key. Impossible. In the same session object, and within the same session, see, session object contains the objects that are loaded from, objects that are loaded, which corresponds to the relational data in the database. So you will never have two customer objects with the same primary key in the same session object. You will not have two invoice objects with the same invoice ID in the same session object. You got it? Got the point? Now tell me, what is happening here is that I see that twice the select statement is fired. The hash code is different. That means, and for the same ID, isn't it? 101. Come on. It is the same 101 that is being retrieved. Same 101 that is being retrieved. How come it is firing the select statement twice? If it is firing to a select statement twice, means it creates a session object here and it abandons it, and it once again creates a session object here. Come on, yes or no? Two distinct session objects. But I did for a short period of time, I did something over here and it did make sure that it was one session object per thread. What is it that I need to do in order to make my statement true that one session object will be created per thread? The answer is right here in front of you. What is that annotation? Come on. आधी आधी बात क्यों बोलते हैं आप लोग? Why do you really want to tease me? हाँ, पूरा बोलो ना अनिंद्य annotation. You're teasing me, Transactional. Yes, yes, yes. So it is supposed to be transactional. Correct. Very good. So when you have a method which is transactional, I'm going to come back to the transactional in more detail later. But as of now, you must understand the fact here that now when I run this, I have made it transactional again. I'm going to come back to transactional later. I repeat, I'm going to come back to transactional later. But as of now, understand that you see the hash code is same. And how many times did the select statement get fired? Though I have said find by ID twice, it is the same ID which is passed 101 only once. Is the concept of session per thread clear? Yes or no? Come on. Is the concept of session per thread crystal clear? Right? And of course, in real life, you're going to make this as transactional, but not this method in the DO as transactional. We will talk about the transactions later. Transaction is by itself a topic that I'm going to talk about later. But as of now, understand, I have proved to you that session per thread means, or rather, let me put it the other way. In one single session, you will not have two objects with the same value of the primary key. See, it is the same session object. So what is happening here, since this is transactional, there is one session object created per thread. And if it is one session object, and once you have retrieved an object into that session object, it will not re-retrieve. It will not fire the select statement again. See, there is one single select statement though. So how many session objects are here per thread now? One or more than one? Come on, come on, come on. How many session objects do you have now? One. One. Very good. Very good. So this is that critical thing that I wanted to explain to you as far as this entire thing is concerned. Now, furthermore, see what I'm doing next. What I'm doing here is sorry, I will keep this code as it is, and I will create another function here called public. I will write void, or rather I will return the customer, the newly updated customer back, and I will say save customer. Okay, I'll say save. I'm not saying insert, I'm not saying update. Hello? Am I saying update? No. Am I saying insert? No, I'm just saying save customer. What is it that I need to pass as a parameter is, suppose the name of this function and the way I'm creating this function is that okay, let me do it the other way. I'll say update name, right? Update name of the customer. So I'm expecting two things: int ID, update the name of which customer object, the primary key, what is the primary key of the customer object of which you want to change, and I'll say string new name. Correct? This is the function. Update name is the name of the function. How will I do it now? How will I work on this? I'll say I will again mark this as transaction. Okay, I will mark this as transaction. As I said, I will explain transaction management in detail later. I'm doing this so that I can, explain to you the contract and explain to you how things really work in a real life scenario. I will now write over here, I'll say customer is equal to, I will write customer repository dot find by ID. Okay, and I'll pass that ID as a parameter. And I'll say dot get. This will give me, because this gives me the optional object, and on optional object. Okay, chalo, I don't want you guys to get confused. Optional, I'll say OPT customer. Okay, and then I remove this, and then I write customer. Customer is equal to. I will write customer OPT customer dot. I'll say get. Okay, ideally, I must always check. See, is this defensive programming? Is this defensive programming? No. What would be defensive programming? If OP customer dot is present, I will check. I will check. Is present. Only then I will say get. Else I will throw some exception. I'll say throw new. I'll say runtime exception. And I'll say customer with ID. Okay, whatever the ID that was passed is not found. Correct? This is not found. Right? That's what I've done. So here I will return my customer object. Return customer. Got it? But wait. I wanted to update the name, whatever the new name is. So what I'm going to do here, I'll say customer dot set name. I repeat, I'm going to do customer dot what? Set name. And whatever the new name is. Whatever the new name is, I'm changing the name. You got that, friends? I will be changing the name. And after, so do you think the moment I say customer dot set name, it is going to fire an update to the database? First of all, tell me, look at this code and tell me, do you think it's going to fire an update or it is going to fire an insert? If at all it fires, which SQL statement do you think it is going to fire, update or insert? It is going to fire an update or an insert. Come on. Insert. I am retrieving an existing customer and changing the name. How come insert? It's going to fire an update. Isn't it? Yes, very good. It's going to fire an update, but it's not going to fire an update. See here, I am going to again call this from my command line runner. After getting the data, I'll say system.out.println, and I'll just put a marker here, zoop, a separator kind of thing, and then I'll write customer do dot update name. I'll say of 101. What is the name of 101? It is PwC Private Limited. Okay, so I'll say the new name is just PwC. Okay, it's just PwC. So what will it do? It will retrieve. See the logic that I have written here. It will retrieve the existing customer by that ID 101. and it will change the name to the new name that is passed as a parameter here. But do you think it is going to fire? No, it's not going to fire an update because it does not even know, right? But let's see. It would end up firing an update. Okay, sorry, because I have made it transactional, right? And the data is dirty, so it will end up firing an update. It's interesting. I'll explain that. Let's see this thing in action. Well, what if it fires? Don't you think we will be able to see that on the console? All right, we're going to see that. See, it did fire. It did fire an update. I didn't do anything. It fired an update. I just said set name. कैसे समझा उसको? कैसे पता चला? How did it understand? And I would like to do something over here. I'll like to write s out, s out. I'll say after set name. Okay. Now see this. I will have to change the value. I'll say, so you see it is already updated. I go back here. I say refresh. You see it is PWC. I go back and then I make it again PWC India. And then I'm going to run this. Okay. Now see what will execute first. Is this, okay, I've already run it. So please don't, I put it in the wrong place. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Again, I'll change it. Why am I changing it again and again? I'll tell you that as well. Let's complete one point first. See this now. I'm saying system.out.println. So after this was correct. After setting the name, I'm saying after set name, I will clear this. Okay. And I'm going to run this again. What my question is that when I say customer.set name, will it immediately fire an update? Yes or no? What do you think? Will it immediately fire an update? The moment I say set name. So you see, if at all it immediately fires an update, that means if I set a name to the new value, if I set address to the new value, in case of real life application, there can be 10 fields that I may want to. Yes, Rakesh, you're right. Rakesh, you're very right. You're right. Okay. So all such things that you are sharing, Rakesh, do it with everyone. But when you answer my question, you've got to answer that question privately. But this is good. This is something which everyone must know. So this is just perfect. Share this with everyone. So if you say set name, it will fire an update. There can be 10 fields. Will it keep on firing update for each and every field? No. When does it fire an update? When it completes this transaction. And this function is marked as transactional and it ends over here. So before it returns back from this update name, at that point of time, it will fire an update. Please see this. Please see this. As you can see, you have after set name this getting printed and then update statement. So not that the moment you say set name and update is fired. No, I have proved it. Please see after set name, I'm saying after set name. So you see this SOP and then update. When is that update happening? When it returns back from this name, this function. What I'm going to do in order to explain, I'll say thread dot sleep. I'll say 5 seconds. That means even after I will surround that in a try catch block. That means I'm putting the thread that is executing the update name. I am putting the thread to sleep. Which thread? The thread in which the update name function is getting executed. I'm putting that to sleep after set name. Now, when do you think you expect to, or what do you think? When will the update statement be fired? Immediately after set name, immediately after the system.out.println, or only and only when this thread completes and returns back the control? What do you think? It's going to go back only and only when it goes back. See here, so you will not see the update statement for next 5 seconds after this. See this after set name, it is not firing an update. Not for after 5 seconds before leaving. Now you see this. It did not fire an update. Yes, it did not fire an update. That's good. It did not fire an update. Why? Can anyone explain to me? When the thread returns back, you are right. But then tell me why it did not fire an update. Maza aa jayega. If someone tells me now, I will be very happy. आराम से, take your time, सोचो. I'm giving you all hints. I'm once again running this. It will not fire an update. Tell me why. You are very close, Anand. You are right. You're not wrong. It does not fire an update. But can you use a better term that I had explained while talking about something over here? It will push. Yeah. That name is the same. So, can you please use a better term here from Hibernate perspective? The object is not. The answer must be one word. The object is not. Come on. The object is not. Yeah, correct. You shouldn't be giving this answer to everyone, Rakesh. You are right. Good, you have not shared that with him. Yes, Monisha, that's correct. Yes, Sanikendu, very correct. You're right. Because the object is not dirty. Yes, Anand, brilliant. Because that object is not dirty. Only when the object is dirty it understands. See, ना common sense है यार. ये hibernate कोई angel ने नहीं लिखा है. No angel has written hibernate. Hibernate is written by those people who have written hibernate does not have two horns on their head, right? Basic concept, basic logic. If you were one of those engineers, writing hibernate framework, you would do the same thing. You will say, why should I unnecessarily fire an update when the object that was retrieved is in the same state? There is no change in the state of that object at all. शबीर भाई अब्बाजान मिले रास्ते में अब्बाजान मिले रास्ते में अब्बाजान मिले रास्ते में अब्बाजान मिले ठीक है शुक्रिया थैंक यू हाँ नहीं वो वहीं रख दो ना वहीं रख दो हाँ जल्दी निकल गया आई एम सॉरी सो that's how it is. That's how it is. Because it's not dirty. So now what I'm going to do is I'll go back here and I will make this as PWC India. So of course this is going to be different. Now I'm dirtying the object. Okay. And I will retrieve this. But now you tell me again, the question is the same. After how many seconds do you see? After 5 seconds, you see that the update is going to be fired. Here you go. After 5 seconds, update is fired. In short, I have just proved to you that when the transaction completes, that is when this function completes before returning the value back, before returning from this function, it flushes it flushes the data. It commits the transaction and flushes the data to the database. I repeat, it commits the transaction automatically. See this, friends, see the beauty here. अभी आपके समझ में आ रहा है? Are you now getting that what exactly is ORM, Object Relational Mapping Tool? What exactly is Object Relational Mapping? I am dealing with what? Take a look at this. Am I dealing with select statement? Am I dealing with update statement? Am I dealing with transaction like, set auto commit to false and then, begin a transaction and end a transaction? Am I doing that? Or I just have to use an annotation and it does the job for me? Come on, yes or no? Isn't it? It does the job for me. Correct? That's what an ORM is. That's what an ORM is. Correct? Pretty simple stuff and very interesting. Very interesting. कोई आपको ऐसे हाइबरनेट नहीं पढ़ाएगा. हाइबरनेट किसे पढ़ाएगा? Dot save method to call in order to save the object. Dot delete method to call to delete an object. Dot find by ID to get the value and find blah 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 blah. No. See, understand what's going on behind the scenes under the hood. Got it? That's how it is. So this was awesome. So we now understand how things really work. Okay, now another thing. अब देखो, public void, or rather I'll say customer again, add customer, or I'll say create customer, whatever name you are comfortable with, create, add, everything is good. Int ID, string name, and comma string address. Okay. What am I going to do here? I'll say customer is equal to new customer, and in brackets ID, comma, name, comma, address. You got that? And here I'm going to now do what? I will still mark this as transactional. Okay. And then here I'm going to return back this customer object. What do you expect to have? What do you expect to see over here? And in order to, make things easier here, okay, I'll keep everything as it is. That's okay. But I'll now comment update. Update ho gaya apna, right? I mean, we have understood how update really works. So I'll just comment this now. And I say customer DAO dot create customer. I'll say 105. I believe I do not have 105. Yeah, 105 is not there. So I'll say 105 comma. I'll say the new name is Wipro. I'll use Nomura. Do I have Nomura? No, I don't. I'll use Nomura. And then I will use the address as Mumbai. Okay, here you go. So what will happen with this? I'm creating a new object. Here, did I use the repository at all for anything other than the retrieval? No. But when I retrieved this, try and understand. When I say find by ID, the object is retrieved and kept where? Come on, kept where? Kept where? Rather, let me use this. It's related to the database. Kept where? In the session object. And if that data which is there in the session object is dirty, and when the transaction is getting committed, it will automatically flush. In other words, update, fire an update because it is a dirty row. It is a dirty object, rather, sorry, not the dirty row, but the dirty object. It will fire an update to the database, correct? And it commits a transaction. But here in this case, take a look at this few lines of code and tell me, will it ever fire an what do you expect here? First of all, what do you expect here? An insert or an update? An insert or an update? You are expecting an insert, correct? You are expecting an insert. It's a new object, right? It's an insert. But do you think it's going to fire an insert? Yes or no? How many of y'all say that it is going to fire an insert? How many of y'all say that you're supposed to fire an insert? I mean, it will fire an insert. Will it fire an insert? Yes or no? Yes, friends? Not sure? Good, good. That's how you must answer. You must answer. It will not fire an insert. Here they go. Let me run this for you. It will not fire an insert. Why? Why? See, no insert at all. Why? See, my dear friends, Hibernate works with the session object. I repeat, Hibernate works with the session object. And it will work with those objects which are within the session, the objects to which it has references from the session object. So the new object that we have created over here, where is the session object? Where is my Hibernate? Where is my JPA? Where is my repository? It's unaware of the existence of this object, right? We have not put this object into the session at all. I repeat, we have not put this object into the session at all. This object that we retrieve from here in case of update customer, when we retrieve it, it goes into the session object so that when we change the name of it, it understands that it was retrieved. That means it is already there in the database. Now, when you change the name, it's a dirty object and it is supposed to fire an update. But here in this case, when I create a new object, it doesn't even know about the existence of this new object. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to tell customer through customer repository, I'm going to tell Hibernate, hey, hello, customer. Here like this. What do you think? Customer repository.save will fire and insert, yes or no? Yes, it will fire and insert. Now let's see when it fires and insert. I'll say thread.sleep again, 5 seconds. Right? Let's see whether it immediately fires and insert. Okay, I'll write s out. Okay, dot save is called. Okay, dot saved is called. And now I run this code. Yes, it is supposed to fire and insert for sure. Because now the session object has the reference to it. But it is only and only after 5 seconds it fired an insert. Why? So dot save does not fire an insert. Note my words. I will repeat this once again. But in order to repeat this, I will have to delete that row. Otherwise, it will give me a primary key violation error. Okay, I have removed that row. Now see this. Again, I will refresh. Now you're going to look at the console very carefully. So when I run this, you see this will get immediately executed after save. You see this? This gets immediately save is called, but only after 5 seconds it fires an insert. See this? Why? Because as I said, your Hibernate works with the session object. Yes, save does not mean fire and insert. Save means put the newly created customer object in the session so that now session is reachable to this object. You're getting the point? When it reaches return customer, it fires yes. When you go back from, so what is happening with dot save? Tell me. What is happening with dot save? Now you must understand this very nicely. I'm sure you have understood it, but please put it in the chat window. What do you mean by save? I did repeat it just a few seconds back. What does save really mean out here? What does save really mean out here? Yes, Anikendu. Perfect statement. Yes, it saves it in the session, stores it in the session. It creates an object in the session. See, no. Instead of using create, refrain from calling it because we have created an object, we are putting it into the session using .save function. So now the session object has a reference to it. And when it has a reference to it, it understands very well that this object was never there in the session earlier. So this is definitely not the one that was retrieved and now dirty. I repeat, it understands that this object with this primary key is not there in the session already. So this is not the one that was already retrieved. And now you are trying to put it into the session. This is a new object, so there is a marker of the object. Internally it maintains a marker that this is a new object, and it knows that it is supposed to fire an insert and not an update. I hope you're getting the point, friends. You're supposed to fire an insert and not an update, and it does that successfully. See this, and I have 105 Nomura Mumbai out here, isn't it, friends? Any doubts, any questions? I would like to take a pause here. Any doubts, any questions?